$104 million. That's what the IRS decided to give Bradley Birkenfeld. As part of its anti-tax evasion offensive, the US government was encouraging people to be whistleblowers.
This award by the IRS is being made thanks to the information provided by Brad that led to over $5 billion in counting in tax payments being made by big banks and wealthy individuals who tried to evade paying their fair share of taxes. Brad's information served as the basis for unprecedented actions against the Swiss bank UBS and collateral impact on other enforcement activities.
And as a bonus, Birkenfeld inherited the prestigious title of whistleblower. These whistleblowers who reveal business or government secrets have become public heroes in an era that demands more and more transparency. Hervé Versiani turned in 8,000 names of undeclared bank accounts from his own HSBC bank. Bradley Manning leaked US military documents classified top secret on WikiLeaks. Edward Snowden revealed the surveillance programs of the American Secret Services. Bradley Birkenfeld, jailed, then a hero. It could have stopped there. But other Swiss banks operating in the United States were about to take a huge risk. Just months after the indictment of UBS, 11 of them, obsessed by greed and a strong sense of impunity, decided to win back those very tax evaders who had left UBS so hurriedly. For US authorities, this was intolerable provocation. Jean-Christophe Schwab, appalled, could only observe.
Unfortunately, you had establishments that had picked up UBS's American clients, and now they were in trouble themselves. 11 Swiss banks, or based in Switzerland, or foreign subsidiaries, all in the sights of the US tax authorities because they'd taken on clients who were probably in trouble with the IRS. Basically, it was a big mistake because they must have known that these clients that UBS had abandoned were suspect and would cause them similar problems.
Et d'autre part, allait leur causer des ennuis similaires.
So the US decided to set an example by attacking the smallest of them. The Wegelin Bank, one of the oldest Swiss institutions, founded in 1741. Despite its prestigious past, it was fined $74 million and forced to shut down. It was a horrifying symbol and hugely traumatic.
We witnessed there the total dismantling of an establishment by the taxman. The bank was so mixed up in tax evasion that it was simply liquidated. The theoretical danger of being dismantled was now a reality, and that greatly influenced subsequent events.
Wegelin has been charged, and 10 other banks are being targeted by America. ATS, Credit Suisse, Julius Baer, as well as banks in Zurich and Basel, including the Swiss subsidiary of HSBC, also notably the Lumi Bank. We're going live to François Genet. The Swiss bank is facing a very aggressive opponent.
The Americans bared their teeth, to say the least. They wanted the names of the tax cheats, and they were ready to tackle the banks to achieve their goals, as they'd shown by attacking Wegelin first. What's more, a release from the Department of Justice made it clear that nobody anywhere was safe from the IRS.
Nobody was safe from the IRS. To find out the names of the tax evaders, the US authorities now wanted to know everything about interbank transactions on both sides of the Atlantic. They demanded all documents exchanged between Swiss parent companies and their US branches.
For the fine that you might eventually have to pay, the U.S. government had to know exactly what happened. American judges had to know everything, not just the little memos, but all the calls and U.S. phone numbers since 2000. And that in order to have an idea of just who was guilty and decide on the appropriate punishments.
The president of the Swiss Confederation could never forget the Wegelin Bank liquidation. Once again, she gave in to U.S. demands.
We had to try to calm things down. By not complying with their demands, we could have ended up with a situation like we had with the Wegelin Bank.
Was this simply irresponsible of her? To authorize banks to turn over all their internal documents to the IRS was to hand over at the same time the names of all the Swiss employees mentioned in them.
Those documents provided hundreds, thousands of names to U.S. tax authorities. The names of employees who were completely innocent, who had nothing to do with any U.S. client. They were all in the same boat, though. All those names, and they didn't know what would happen to them.
So 10,000 people, there were 10,000 people potentially affected. Employees, former employees, managers, even external lawyers were thrown on the mercy of a foreign criminal jurisdiction that was not taking things lightly and could really cause them trouble. All this to save the bank.
Douglas Hornung is a lawyer specializing in defending employees whose names were given to the Americans.
What is unclear, and we cannot, in my opinion, accept, is that the Swiss government was involved in this scheme. That is totally unacceptable. The first duty of a government, be it Swiss or French or whatever, is to protect its citizens, not to throw them at the mercy of a foreign criminal jurisdiction when they're just doing their jobs. In Switzerland, they're beyond reproach. The least they can expect is for their own government not to betray them.
From the start of this standoff with the United States, the Bern Parliament hadn't exactly impressed anyone with its courage. It preferred to leave the government to negotiate secretly.
Treason! Switzerland has given up its assets.
The banks must assume their responsibilities.
What state will Swiss finance be in 10 years' time?
The direct implication of ordinary bank employees would eventually make people aware that this time, the whole country was in danger.
Treason. A betrayal on the part of the management of 5 banks, among them the jewels of our financial system, including the district banks that were supposed to be above suspicion. It was a betrayal of their own loyal employees, whose loyalty was clearly above the norm, not only to their employers, but to the whole branch. It was also the betrayal of an entire country, one that believed its banks had learned a lesson, that confidence in the financial sector was warranted, and that it would now do anything to maintain it. And now, despite the outcry, despite the scandal, despite the obvious illegality, the bank managements involved wanted to furnish new information. Employees continued to be relegated to profits and losses, and the names of innocent people to be handed over, most likely to avoid having to hand over the cheats.
By handing over the names of 4,500 clients, then tons of data, and finally thousands of employees' names, the state, and specifically FINMA, has taken the place of the real culprits.
What can we say about the decision to allow these honorable bankers, who are selling out their own families to save their own skins, to unconditionally send the United States the identities of their own employees?
This anxiety, which is beginning to be felt by Parliament, was increasing as the U.S. toughened its stance with the Swiss banks.
We have this law called the Fatka law. What does it mean? It means that every financial institution, banks, hedge funds, insurance companies, anything related to finance that opens an account for an American abroad must automatically declare it to the IRS, declare what comes in and what goes out, as well as the balance at the end of the year. An automatic exchange of information between private finance and the IRS. The IRS had nothing more to do. It waits for the declarations, has a few people manage the information, and then pounces on those who don't comply. This is a death stroke to bank secrecy worldwide.
The Fatka law will not officially be implemented until 2014. But already, the banks are anticipating the consequences. This time, even if it hasn't been legally repealed, Swiss banking secrecy is dead.
We have to face up to it and see it in proportion. It's going to be painful. Employment levels will suffer, have already started to suffer. There will be layoffs. There already have been. The Swiss economy will certainly suffer, and people don't realize that yet. There's been a 30% increase in unemployment in Geneva alone in the banking and financial sectors, because many banks are dismissing or laying off personnel. So in all likelihood, as the pressure increases in Europe and elsewhere, there will be more social and other problems, and unemployment will increase significantly.
The Swiss banking sector has gone from 12% to 7% of GDP, with resulting consequences on real estate, the hotel industry, and luxury trades. UBS, like the other banks, is pruning its workforce. It has laid off 10,000 of its 80,000 employees, including 2,500 in Switzerland. Part of its administrative services has been relocated to Poland.
Unfortunately, that's the hardest thing for me to do at the moment. It's the right thing for the bank, though, because now we can clearly see all the changes that are taking place in the Swiss financial sector.
To finally settle the dispute with the U.S. authorities, the 11 banks that tried to pick up UBS clients in the United States will be subject to billions of dollars in fines. This is going to have an impact on the entire country.
There will be less tax revenue because the small or large fines will be tax deductible. That means the big banks will pay less taxes. UBS hasn't paid any tax since 2008 or 2009 because it had to pay those huge fines. So less tax revenues, and in the short term, more budgetary problems for Switzerland.
Short-term budgetary problems, certainly. But from now on, it's the long term that worries thinking people.
We are now in an economic war, it's true, but I fear we've only ourselves to blame. For decades, we were allowing tax evasion under the cover of bank secrecy, and that could only lead to problems. And basically, it's legitimate for other countries that have public finance issues, the United States, Germany, France, or whoever, to go to war on people who've defrauded fiscal authorities. When you've protected those people for years and years, well, unfortunately, we're in a very uncomfortable situation. Yes, public opinion is changing. If you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, I'd have said that bank secrecy was a sacred cow and shouldn't be touched, like washes and chocolate. It's a symbol of national pride. But people are starting to realize that what was once considered an intangible asset of our financial sector has become a millstone around our necks. We really need to align ourselves with honest people.
Honest people. Given what the Americans have done, it's perhaps not the best adjective. What the U.S. really wanted was to prevent money from their taxpayers enriching other countries. They're a lot less fussy, though, about other people depositing money with them. Indeed, the state of Delaware, right next to New York, has no reason to be jealous of Switzerland when it comes to tax evasion.
All the undeclared money of Latin America is in the United States. And the United States is the best tax haven in the world if you're not an American. This really has to be said. It's quite something to be given moral lessons by this big country that hits where it hurts most. And blacklists you around the world, while it has been doing the same thing itself for many years with money from Russia, Latin America, and other places. It's very hypocritical to lecture people about what they mustn't do when you're busy doing it yourself, isn't it? And teaching them a lesson when you're up to exactly the same thing.
In a Europe that's being squeezed by public debt, some countries would dearly like to recuperate some of that hidden money, just like the Americans have.
Over the last 2 years, the Swiss have been shown to be weak and to quickly capitulate as soon as they're put under pressure, especially American pressure. And inevitably, what comes across to the outside world, especially concerning the United States, but also in relation to Europe or elsewhere, is that you just have to be strong and firm to get whatever you want from another country. And unfortunately, it's likely now that other countries will be inspired to use this American tactic. So probably, and unfortunately for the Swiss, European countries will get the same results by using these American pressure tactics.
Inspired by the U.S. Fatka law, the G8 powers are talking about setting up an automated information exchange system. No taxpayer, not just Americans, would be able to open an account abroad without their home country automatically being notified. But nobody in this game is really showing his hand. And practically every country has its own tax haven. Each watches its neighbor and calculates what it would gain or lose from having a totally transparent system. As for UBS, the cause of this whole Swiss debacle, has it been knocked out by the U.S. administration? Not really. Today, it's once again the #1 private asset management bank in the world.
I'm very satisfied because our operating results have reached 2.2 billion. These are very good results. We've worked well, and we've achieved all our strategic goals.
The hunting grounds of UBS have changed. The new fortunes are in Asia. Singapore and Hong Kong are now the main branches of a bank that has left its native land to sail to more discreet shores.